Right. Not too sure what happened there. I apologize for that greatly. I believe my internet just kind of gave up on me for a few seconds, but I think we are back, and I think we are completely live again. Just gonna have to make sure of that real quick. It's a good thing it happened under the safety car. Right, I believe that might be everything. We are back. I am very, very sorry about that, everybody. But, yes, as I was saying before my broadcast unfortunately cut off, Ross currently in P8, Benny in P9, and Reaper in P10. And that rounds off the top 10 that we have for you here today. Safety car started on lap 6. It's currently lap 7. A bunch of the drivers still haven't caught up to the back of the grid. I believe the car will stay out probably one more lap, as it lets all the drivers catch up. And we can see 3 cars now opting to go onto the inters. So Noof in P14 in the Mercedes, Arctic Squirrel in the Aston Martin in P15, and MBMA in the Williams in P16, all opting to go onto the inters to try something different. You see a bunch of drivers actually dart right into the pits, Abmo being the first one of them. Let's see what tires he's choosing to pop on. Sets for the intermediates, as a matter of fact. So Abmo probably going to get a very, very good launch at the start of the safety car, restart of the safety car, being now on the inters. And this is what we were talking about, drivers unfortunately not coming into the pits. So we can see the Ferraris of Groen and CRF will now have to discuss amongst themselves which driver will be going to the pits first, unless they plan on double stacking it, which I guess would not be great for CRF, but if that's the decision that they have to make, then they would know best. As we can see now, most of the drivers opting to go onto the intermediate tire compounds, obviously not as much rain falling down, the track drying up a little bit as well. But what does this mean for the safety car? So it's lap 8. Safety car came out at lap 6. Will it stay out one more lap, or is it going to go in at the end of this lap? Either way, most of the drivers are now going to be going into the pits. Noof Squid, actually, as a matter of fact, who was the Mercedes driver that we were talking about earlier near the bottom of the grid, who went on to the intermediates first. Actually now ahead of all the intermediate runners, so this has worked out wonderfully for him, as we get the notification that safety car is coming in this lap. Groen now obviously going to be slowing down the pack a lot more. Drivers behind him will all have to be careful about when he's going to decide to go, and whenever that is, drivers will have to obviously follow. No overtakes until the leader crosses the line first, and I believe he has decided to finally go. As CRF, none of these top runners actually deciding to go into the pits as of yet. Which is very surprising. I thought most of the cars would be willing to go on to the intermediates at the moment. But as we can see, that clearly not being the case. Groen got a fantastic launch off from the safety car. Meanwhile, CRF closely followed behind by Owen in the McLaren as well. We'll see if this jump to intermediate conditions was the best decision or not. Noof Squid currently 1.2 seconds behind the wet runners, as well as MBMA retires. I believe he might have spun out and crashed his car. Clearly he's not in the pits, so must have obviously been some incident that happened there. We can see the Williams of pointers maybe trying to make a potential move. Noof Squid actually dropped down quite a few positions there, unfortunately. Not too sure what happened. We were kind of using him as a banker to see how fast the inters were, but clearly it's not too... We'll have to see, I guess, with Admo as our banker then. As Groen says, the fastest lap of the race on the wet set of tires. As we can see Admo crossing the line, will he set a faster lap time? Nothing doing yet. So it still seems like the wets may be the better tires to be on at the moment. Actually, as a matter of fact, Admo is massively gaining on Tichy. Currently 0.7 seconds behind. As we will ride on board with him for a little bit. And we can see how much more grip he has through these corners. Yup, definitely there is a lot more grip in these inters. But is it enough to really make too much of a difference? We'll have to see. As Pointer is now trying to make his move on Luke. Nothing doing yet. Too far back on this occasion. So, from P1 to P7, we still have all wet runners. P8 to P14 is all inters. P15 on wets and P16 on inters. Love MBMA. Was going to retire and then they disconnected and came back, which caused me to spin. Oh, that's very unfortunate. I'm sorry to hear about what happened there, but yeah, no, that absolutely sucks for you, mate. Oh, as we see a Haas that has gone off. I believe that might be the Haas of Reaper. Not too sure what happened there. Mighty unfortunate for him. Would not be what he would be wanting, obviously. He's having to come into the pits as well. Possibly damaged his front wing. He's definitely going to need to replace that. As you can see, Admo very much closing in onto the Aston Martin of SietseBouma. Will he be making a dive down the inside? Nothing doing yet. But you know, Admo will be looking to get past this Aston Martin as soon as possible. Obviously, the train of cars coming right behind him. Ross eating that rear spoiler up. With the tires Admo has, it wouldn't be any surprise if he makes the move relatively sooner than later. It would be best. Obviously, maybe using the Aston Martin to hold back Ross a little bit, as it allows him to maybe stretch his wings and form a little bit of a gap. And now we have a bit of a train, FX and Parker as well, very, very closely behind Ross. We got two fights going on at the same time. As we'll ride on board with Admo, who goes down the inside into turn 1 on Tichy, and he manages to make the move stick. Obviously, Tichy will get the outside line in turn 2, but no doing there. Admo, with the more grip on his tires, manages to make the move. Meanwhile, Ross also trying to make a move on Tichy, goes towards the inside, and as we can see, FX and Parker lose this car in the rear camera over there. Not too sure what happened there. Goes down the inside, tries to make the move stick on Tichy, and does that very, very well. Very unfortunate there for FX and Parker. I'm not too sure what happened there to his race, but whatever it was, I believe he might have some front wing. Yep, nope, no front wing at all, as a matter of fact. And with that, Admo and Ross are now slowly making their way up and trying to catch up to these wet tire runners. I apologize if I sound a bit sick as well, everybody. It is because I am coming under a cold at the moment. So stuffy nose and all that. Benny, who is also one of the title contenders for this fight, is really nowhere to be seen so far, currently sitting in P10 at the moment. As we see the Alfa Romeo of Luke coming into the pits at lap 12, followed by Pointers and J. O'Leary, leaving in the top 5 only the top 2 Ferraris opting to stay out right now. Let's see what tires they will be putting on. And it is as well the intermediates, as Benny now sets the fastest time of the race on the intermediate tires. And if that doesn't scream to you that it is past the crossover point, then I don't know what will. Might have been a decision called a bit too late for these Ferrari drivers, and now Admo is in very serious contention to get some good amount of points this race as well. Ross closely behind as well on the intermediate tires. As you can see, CRF managing to catch up on his teammate quite a bit as well. What will the Ferraris do, ladies and gentlemen? That is the big question. Will the Ferrari be pitting? They really should. I'm not too sure if Groen tried to let his teammate pass there, or if he just went completely wide, but I'm guessing he just went wide. Right, and as we can see here, Groen and CRF currently sitting P1 and P2, the Ferraris who have been leading this entire race, as a matter of fact, still out. And we can see Groen, who was the driver ahead, choosing to go into the pits and leaving CRF out on the wet tires. SietseBouma, meanwhile, on the other hand, the only other driver who has been on his old set of wets, but also coming into the pits. And now we can see that Abmo gets promoted into P2, Ross into P3, and Groen dropping down way down the grid into P6 at the moment by the looks of it. Fastest lap of the race set by Owen as the track begins to dry up even further. CRF obviously will be wanting to get off of these wet tires as soon as possible, as it's lap 14 now. He was approaching the pit window anyways for the wet, so he might as well. Let's look at a few battles happening up and down the grid. We can see Benny currently 4/10 behind Major. Both the AlphaTauri and the Red Bull, sister teams of each other, or well, the AlphaTauri being the sister team of Red Bull. Not trying to live under that shadow, maybe potentially trying to make a move and promote himself up and give himself a fighting chance for maybe the podium positions. Currently still a bit too far back, as we can see FX and Parker actually having a very close fight with SietseBouma. It's a good thing we moved over to this fight quickly. FX and Parker down the inside manages to make the move stick on what was a fantastic move from him as well. And now we can see CRF also entering the pits, which means that your current race leader in this situation is Abmo. So the McLaren of Abmo has now been moved into P1, Ross into P2, and Major into P3. Luke as well setting the fastest lap of the race at the moment. And what an interesting turn of events this has been for all the drivers. I said it before as well that you never really know with this sport. You never really know what to expect with these drivers, and here we have it. As we can see, Groen managing to get back into the lead as well ahead of CRF, his teammate. Oh, wow. Oh, I believe, I'm not too sure who that was. I'm not sure if it was the Alfa Romeo or the Ferrari that completely drove into the wall there. Owen, meanwhile, trying to make a move. Gets very close behind, actually hits the rear end of Benny. Good to see that nobody spun out there. There was not any significant amount of damage to Owen's car either, but he has to be a bit more careful than that. Oh, that is a beautiful camera angle here at Sao Paulo. And as we can see now, Owen desperate to make this move on Benny and trying to catch up to Major as well. Benny would be hoping to use the slipstream behind Major to hold back Owen as he goes very off the track as well. Will hinder his top speed, but it looks like it's still enough. Owen not unable to make the move and decides to stay back for the time being. A bit of a fight going on at the back end as well, as it was Luke who decides to enter the pits. Reaper, meanwhile, getting a 3-second time penalty. So we can see this train now of Owen, Benny, and Major all fighting for P3 at the moment, the bottom step of the podium. Big points still to fight for here as Reaper sets the fastest lap of the race with a 1:19.2. Lap 16 of 36. Just a little before a little less than halfway through this race. And already we've seen dramatic changes as FX and Parker also now picks up a 3-second time penalty. Benny seeming to be a lot more closer this time around to Major. And Owen actually starting to drop down a little bit, so maybe this whole slipstream game that Benny's been playing with Major has been working out in his benefit. If you are all just tuning in, welcome to Tier 3. We're here at lap 17. There's been a safety car, and as we can see, Benny actually making a move down the inside of Major. Will he make the move stick? Yes, he does. Dives down the inside and manages to move himself up into P3, the bottom step of the podium. Major, meanwhile, going to be trying to stick with Benny, maybe trying to get that position right back. That was a fantastic overtake from Benny. But yes, as I was saying, if you're just joining us, welcome to Tier 3. It's currently laps 17 to 36. We've had a safety car here, which has dramatically changed up the entire grid. Obviously, most of the drivers start now racing on the intermediates, but starting off on the wets. I think we're in store for quite an interesting rest of the race as well, as we can go down a bit rest of the grid and we can see Reaper trying to make a move on Tigi as well. Nothing doing yet. Reaper, you know, would be wanting to get past this man as soon as possible. And if my money is on any person in this entire race to be able to make a comeback, it is Reaper. With his performance that we saw at Imola, it clearly shows that no matter where he is, it does not bother him. He will be fighting to gain as many positions as possible, and I'm sure it's no different in this situation as well. Meanwhile, Owen makes the move down towards the inside of Major, as Major's been just dropping positions. However, Major breaks quite late. Not too sure if that was the sensible decision, as Owen, after diving down the inside of Major, manages to make the move and moves himself up into P4. Benny's still sitting in P3 at the moment. Ross unable to catch Admo, currently sitting 2.3 seconds behind P1. After that fight for P3 between Benny, Owen, and Major, we have the Ferraris of Groen and CRF currently sitting P6 and P7. Obviously, these drivers starting off on pole position and P2 will not be very pleased with the situation that they're in. However, damage limitation should be the goal here. As we can see, Mighty Chump has now retired, and we once again have another safety car. And once again, this throws another spanner into the works. So what will these drivers do now? Lap 19 of 36. Another safety car has come out. These inters are still relatively fresh. Admo, Ross, and Benny, however, sitting on 11-lap-old intermediates as compared to some of the other drivers who are on 5-lap-old ones. And with this full-fledged safety car, will be interesting to see if any of the drivers decide to pit. So far, nothing going yet, as the incident by Mighty Chump has now caused a full safety car. Actually, we can see FX and Parker going into the pits as well, maybe to switch onto something else, and Arctic Squirrel getting a drive-through penalty for speeding onto the pit lane. One of the toughest penalties you could be serving, as FX and Parker actually goes on to the mediums, but it's still raining. I can most definitely still see some rain. We'll see how that decision pans out for him. And now that we have a bit of time to breathe, obviously let's hope my broadcast does not cut off midway through again, but now that we have a little bit of time to slow down and look at the grid, let's run it back from the top. Admo currently in the McLaren sitting in P1, followed by Ross, Benny, Owen, and Major. That would be your top 5. The Ferraris, who started on pole position in P2 respectively, currently sitting in P6 and P7 after, I guess, a lapse of judgment, decided to make them not pit sooner for the intermediates. However, they are on the fresher tires, on the fresher intermediate, so it'll be interesting to see what they can do or how they can use these tires to their advantage. So far, nothing doing yet. They've been sticking very close to each other, obviously feeding off of each other, trying to carry each other to a more successful points finish, but we'll have to see how this goes going forward. Pointers sitting in P8, O'Leary in P9, and Noof currently sitting in P10. And that rounds off your top 10 here. I believe there will be a lot of questions to be asked after this race as well. A lot of drivers reconsidering their strategies. A lot of things people can learn, and as we can see, there are now 3 drivers that have opted to go onto the mediums. So FXN Parker, Luke, and Arctic Squirrel all choosing to go onto the medium tires, feeling that it is way too dry out here for inters. I can definitely still see some raindrops going down. I'm not too sure if I completely agree with the idea, but again, drivers would know best and they would understand the conditions better than anybody else. I am just a mere spectator. If it was up to me, I would definitely go down there and touch the pavement to see if it's wet or not, but by the looks of it, it still seems like it's not a great idea to come in for the mediums. However, after these three cars have come in for the mediums, has anybody else decided to? Is anybody else going to take that risk? Does not seem like it, no. Nothing as of yet either. So all these drivers still opting to choose to stay on to the intermediates, feeling that it's still the better tire to be on. Actually, let me go and spectate FXN and see just what his car is like. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I'm not too sure about that one. Lap 21 of 36 here at Brazil. Safety car most likely going to be coming in at the end of this lap. Admo's going to have to set off a brilliant race. He's going to have to take off at the perfect time to keep Ross behind him. Obviously, Admo's teammate Owen currently also sitting in P4. Both the McLaren drivers looking for a strong points finish here today. I believe these safety cars should be coming in at the end of this lap. And as the drivers now finish up Sector 2, yep, safety car coming in at the end of this lap. So now Admo will have to hold up the rest of the grid and take off at a time he deems appropriate. Obviously, we'll be trying to catch the rest of the drivers off guard. Drivers will now be allowed to overtake each other until they cross the line. Admo actually not really holding up too fast, not holding up too much, decides to go already as well. Meanwhile, we can see Benny at the back trying to make a move on Ross. Will he make the dive down the inside? No, he will not. Major, meanwhile, Owen making the move on Major. However, nothing doing yet. Is there a bunch of chaos in the background? Admo, meanwhile, getting a fantastic launch from all of this. Owen, his teammate, trying to move up himself up into P3 as well. Trying to make it a double McLaren podium. Nothing doing yet. Ross still currently sitting in P2, as we can see a bunch of overtakes up and down the grid. As we see Major make the move on Owen, which would not be what he would want. Still down the inside, Owen still manages to keep his position as well. Fantastic racing there from the McLaren driver. Benny, meanwhile, on the other hand, closely following right behind Ross. We're looking to definitely move himself up and into P2 at the moment. Goes around the outside with the better traction. Will he be able to make the move stick? Actually, he does make the move stick. Benny on the outside, and now with the inside line, manages to maintain his lead. Owen, on the other hand, also using the compromised Ross to his benefit, moves himself up into P3 at the moment. And with that, Ross has dropped down 2 positions in the span of like maybe 2 corners. Ross, meanwhile, fighting right back. But Owen, with the switchback, managed to make a beautiful move around Ross and moves himself back into P3. As you can see, the Red Bull drivers in the background also getting all involved with the Ferraris as well. Groen trying to make a move down the outside of Major. Let's see what happens here going towards the inside. We have 2 cars making 2 overtakes over here. We can see Ross down the inside manages to make the move on the McLaren. However, the Ferrari makes the move on the Red Bull. CRF now also going to be trying to make his move, trying to catch up with the Red Bull as it seems. Crazy overtakes going on here at post-safety car race. And as we can see, the Red Bull driver of O'Leary also trying to get past Reaper. And Reaper moving himself back up into P9 at the moment. Tons of fighting going on up ahead. CRF maybe thinking about the move, but thinks better of it, backs out, and lets Major keep the position at the moment. Meanwhile, we can see Owen. Oh, a bunch of contact going on over there as Owen makes contact with Ross, which compromises Ross a little bit and allows Groen to sneak in as well. The Ferraris, which unfortunately had dropped back earlier, are now fighting back Goes around the outside, but goes onto the grass, unfortunately. Owen, on the other hand, making a move down around the outside of Ross. What is going on here at Brazil? Ross trying to maintain the inside line, does so well, but and defends from the Ferrari, however, that allows Owen in the McLaren to go through once again. And we can see Admo and Benny in P1 and P2 deciding to go into the pits, and Owen double stacks with the McLaren, maybe feeling that there's enough time to make that kind of a move. CRF decides to stay out, opting not to go and double stack. Actually, I want to see this. Owen, will he be held up? Very, very slightly, but actually, you know what? For a double stacking move, he actually gets to move down pretty well. However, he does lose out the position to Groen and Ross. Obviously, that was to be expected. Ross actually fitting on the soft tire compound, as we can see FX and Parker saying the fastest lap of the race as well. And coming out of the pits, Admo currently leads the rest of the grid on dry tires. Technically sitting in a net P1 at the moment, with Benny and Luke sitting in a net P2 and P3. Interesting how Luke managed to get himself involved in this situation as well, as we can see Groen very closely behind on Ross, trying to make a few more moves, as well as the Alpine FX and Parker getting all involved. Almost 3 wide into that corner, but deciding better off it. And FX and Parker just turns into the Ferrari of Groen, who will not be happy about that. We'll definitely be reporting that incident. Ross, meanwhile, gets also taken down the rest of the grid, as FX and Parker seemingly barges his way into P7 at the moment. We can see Benny also trying to make a move on the McLaren of Admo, which is for the net position, for the net lead of the race. Nothing doing yet. As we can see, the intermediate runners ahead of the race now beginning to come into the pits. However, Benny is right behind Admo, goes down the inside of the McLaren. Will he make the position? Actually manages to make the position way before turn 1 as well. And with that, the lead of the race has now changed, with Benny now leading the race and Admo currently sitting in P2 at the moment. We have a crazy amount of overtakes now going on here at Brazil. As we can see, the McLaren of Owen also trying to make a move on the Haas of Ross, who was also fighting for the podium positions, but clearly dropped down significantly. It has to be bothering him, however, currently still 1/10 behind him. Will he be making a move around this turn? It's been his favorite, so it's been a favorite for tons of drivers on this track so far. Decides to nothing of it, backs off a little bit. Oh, actually, never mind. Makes a dive down the inside. Wow. There was a tiny, tiny sliver of a gap, and he manages to do it. Goes around the outside of Ross into the next corner, and manages to make the move. Fantastic racing there by Owen as well. As you can see, FX and Parker currently now sitting in P5 at the moment. Admo currently dropping down from Benny. And the Ferrari of CRF also making a ton of positions. As we can see, the Aston Martin of Tichy has spun out. And now their drivers are dropping down the rest of the grid, as Benny now sets a 1:13.5, the fastest time of the race. FX and Parker, meanwhile, racing with Luke, goes around the outside before the turn even arrives and manages to make the move stick. With DRS now enabled, we will be seeing a lot more interesting overtakes going on as well. Reaper, on the other hand, goes around the outside of Noof, makes that move stick brilliantly as well, keeping himself up into P11, is currently on the hard tires, is the only driver on the hard tire compound. Didn't need a minute to catch my breath there. Feel like it was just like non-stop action for like a good 4 or 5 laps. Tier 3 definitely putting on a show for us here today. As we can see, Admo now very, very much dropping down from Benny, and CRF, knowing that, has closed the gap down from 2.5 to roughly 1.2 seconds to Admo. Also setting a purple sector 2. There is blood in the water, and this Ferrari is smelling it. Owen and Luke also battling it out, with Owen coming out ahead, trying to make a comeback to go help his teammate out as much as possible. As we can see, Groen also making a move on pointers. Going around the outside into turn 1, manages to make that move very nicely done. As Reaper gets another 3-second time penalty. Excuse me. And just as I was saying, it was a 1.5 second gap. CRF has now managed to close the gap to Abmo by a considerable margin, only 0.6 seconds behind the McLaren. Lap 27 of 36 here at Brazil. Time slowly winding down. Obviously only 9 more laps to go. And you know, Abmo would be wanting to hold on to this position as much as possible. However, with that time penalty that he does have on him, it will be very difficult to do so as well. DRS wide open as he begins to try to make a move on Abmo. Will he be able to make this overtake into turn 1? Nothing doing yet. Decides to stay back. Decides maybe that the DRS zone in the next part will be a more significant help to him. You can see a bunch of moves also as well as Ross moves himself up. And meanwhile, CRF around the outside of Abmo makes the overtake done before the turn even arrives, and Abmo now moves down into P3. With CRF, the Ferrari managing to move back up into the podium positions, and now currently sitting P2 at the moment. Luke, meanwhile, trying to catch the Haas of Ross, who is on 4-lap old softs. It will be interesting to see if his tires can make it to the end of the race. I'm not too sure they can. Obviously 8 more laps to go here at Brazil, so not too sure if this will be the best situation for him. Luke going towards the outside of Ross. Ross, meanwhile, keeping the inside line, manages to keep the position as well. But with the DRS zone approaching very, very rapidly, for how much longer will he be able to hold these drivers back? As a matter of fact, Luke is now going to be having to fight with Major, who is not the person he'd be wanting to see right now, as he was wanting to go for trying to go for Ross, but Major managing to make the move on Luke, as a matter of fact, coming out of nowhere. We see Abmo actually 0.7 seconds behind as well. Meanwhile, Major with DRS wide open, unable to catch Ross. He's been keeping himself quite high up the grid as well. Reaper, on the other hand, had also come into the pits and now puts on a fresh set of softs. Obviously, mediums would definitely not be the right choice of tires to be on at the moment. Oh, and as Major goes massively off the track, gets a 10-second penalty for corner cutting, which, albeit was a bit unfair, but oh my lord, he massively cuts across the corners. And with a 10-second penalty and the drivers being as close to each other as they are, I'm not too sure there's much more Major could do about that. Abmo, meanwhile, still within a second of CRF, trying not to let this man go, trying to catch that Ferrari. Go down a little bit, we can see the Ferrari of Groen actually making a move on Luke as well. Makes the move done before the corner even ends. And that moves the Ferrari of Groen into P7 after obviously him having to stay out that extra bit longer during the pit stops as to not double stack. Has dearly costed him, unfortunately. However, his teammate CRF currently in P2 at the moment, who's very comfortably making a gap to Abmo as well. And as we approach lap 31, time slowly winding down here at Brazil. Drivers will definitely be looking to make their final pushes now. Oh, and Reaper retires from the session. I believe he might have spun out. He's on track at the moment. And it's another final safety car. Another final safety car. And that makes Groen dash right into the pits to maybe go and put on a fresh set of softs. This final safety car may be the decider, ladies and gentlemen. Lap 31 of 36, and the final safety car comes out. What will happen here? A bunch of drivers now come into the pits to put on a fresh set of softs. I'm not too sure if Benny and the others should have done the same. However, I think they may have already crossed the line by the time the safety car went out. But this makes things very, very interesting indeed. What will happen here? Benny obviously currently sitting in P1. Will he decide to make the dart into the pits? He decides not to. Opts to stay on his medium tires. Trust that they will take him to the end of the race. CRF not either deciding to go into the pits, but however, FX and Parker does decide to go into the pits. Maybe opting to switch onto the soft tire compound, which promotes Abmo and Williams, which promotes Owen into P4. This being, I believe, the third safety car of this race. And this safety car should be the decider as well. By the time the cars get going again, it'll probably be lap 34, I believe. And Arctic Squirrel, once again, 5-second time penalty, cross the pit lane exit. I believe cross the white line, which drivers should be reminded not to do. It's a very bad habit that a lot of them have developed. And we are in for a very interesting set of final laps. So to run through you all through the grid at the moment, P1 to P7 currently running their old tire compounds, 8 lap olds roughly. Meanwhile, P8 to P14 all on fresh softs. It is the old medium runners versus the fresh softs. Do they have enough time to make these overtakes? How far up the grid can these drivers move? Everything is on the line here at Brazil. Everything to play for as well. We are in store for a very interesting last set of laps as lap 33 has now begun. Drivers are most likely going to be going into the pits. The safety car is most likely going to be going into the pits at the end of this lap, as Arctic Squirrel also retires from this race. We can see all these drivers weaving back and forth, trying to heat up their tires, trying to keep temperature in them as much as possible. Benny leading the race as well. Will need to set the perfect launch so he can create a gap to CRF. Both Abmo and Owen also willing to jump on any mistakes that these drivers make. And of course, we cannot forget about these soft runners who have lined themselves up. Actually, with lap 33, let's take a quick look at penalties as well. So Abmo currently sitting with a 5-second penalty, Ross with 3, Major with 13 seconds, and FX and Parker with 6. And with that, safety car is coming in this lap. Benny is going to be holding up the rest of the grid, and I believe he's gone. Has he taken off? No, he has not. Okay. Holding up the rest of the grid so far. Let's see when he decides to go here. Weaving the cars back and forth, trying to go off, and there he goes. Benny has decided to take his launch. CRF also following really closely behind him. However, he gets the jump on him. We can see a bunch of cars coming up together. As we can see, Abmo now trying to make a move on Benny. On CRF, nothing doing yet. Has to stay back. Owen, meanwhile, still currently sitting in P4 at the moment. A bunch of cars coming through. Some trying to make a move on the others. Major currently spins out of his car and goes straight into the wall, which allows FX and Parker going into P6 at the moment. Benny managed to make a secure launch from the safety car restart. And both the Red Bull drivers are now in the bottom end of the race. It's Imola all over again for these drivers, as incidents seem to haunt the Red Bull team, causing them to be P12 and P13 respectively. FX and Parker managing to move himself up into P5 is growing. The Ferrari also trying hard to fight back. Oh wow, lap 34, and then from lap 5 to from P5 to P11, it is nothing but fresh soft runners. What will happen here, as FX and Parker will be desperately trying to make a move on Owen as well. Extremely close fight. Owen maybe making a move on his own teammate at the moment. Nothing doing yet. Decides to stay back at this moment. FX and Parker, meanwhile, on the other hand, very, very closely behind on the McLaren as well. Goes towards the outside line. Obviously, no DRS yet immediately after the safety car restart. Will he be too far back to make a move? Yes, he is. Nothing going yet. Let's look down a bit of the grid as we can see Noof making the move on pointers into P10 at the moment. But FXN closely following behind Owen as well, is on the fresh soft tires, goes down the inside of Owen, manages to make the move stick. However, Owen keeping that inside line will be trying to keep his position. However, FXN with the better tires manages to make the move and moves himself up into P4, and now is looking at the rear end of Avmo, trying to make that move as well. Sees the podium positions right in front of him as well. Benny, on the other hand, manages to create a almost 1 second gap to CRF. CRF would be desperately trying to catch up, but it's either now or never for these drivers. Benny setting the fastest lap of the race. No DRS as of yet, however, I believe DRS will be enabled this lap. Avmo is going to need to be very, very careful here, as Owen also starting to get overtaken by the Ferrari. However, over here, as we can see, FX and Parker, DRS wide open. Avmo fighting with every inch of ERS he probably has, cannot defend from FX and Parker, who manages to move himself up into P3 here in the final lap of Brazil. Avmo obviously having the penalties that he does, with Groen also making the move on Owen as well. FX and Parker managing to get another 3-second time penalty, and so that just opens up the opportunity for Avmo that much more. However, Avmo sitting on the penalties that he has at the moment himself. Will be interesting to see. However, with only as this lap, oh man, I need to gather my words together. Lap 36 at 36. It has been an absolutely crazy performance here by all the drivers. Obviously, there's only one that can win, but this race has been one of the most interesting ones I've ever seen. Benny crosses the line and wins the Brazilian Grand Prix. What a fantastic race. CRF in the Ferrari manages to finish in P2. The other Ferrari of Groen, despite the whole commotion that he's been through, manages to secure a P3. Owen in the McLaren sits in a P4. Tichy out of nowhere comes up and scores a P5. Luke with a P6. Ross in P7, Avmo in P8, Noof in P9, and P10 goes to pointers. Wow! What a race! What an absolute commotion of a race! Massive congratulations to all these drivers for putting on one of the best performances I've personally ever seen. And here's your race winner, Benny, who seemingly did everything right, managed to play everything to his advantage, surrounded by both the Ferrari drivers, who would have been wanting to win this race, but however, you cannot take away from Benny what he did today. What an outstanding race. I'll definitely be trying to get these drivers into the interview channel as well. Let me just make sure that if they want to do them or not. Hello, hello, Growin. How are you doing, bro? Congratulations on what was another fantastic race from your end. You just need to give me 1 second while I try to add these people to the party. I believe it's Benny who I have to add as well, and if you have, do you have CR4 added? Yeah, so if you could just invite him to the party, that would be great. But yes, Growin, congratulations on what was another fantastic race from your end. You must be very happy with this role you've been on in these last two races. Yeah, I was about to ask. Obviously, I saw how much you struggled through the grid as well, especially when most of the drivers shifted onto the medium tire compounds. You had to stay out to let your teammate so you didn't double stack, and you dropped down massively, but fought back up to the podium. So that was absolutely fantastic. This was a chaotic race, wasn't it? Mm. Well, big congratulations to you as well. You drove a fantastic race. So far, a very hot start to the season for you as well. So, congrats on that. Yeah, for sure, man. And I'm sure to have your teammate up there with you was also a great feeling. But I'm gonna be moving my attention to Benny. Benny, big congratulations.
Thank you, thank you.
What
Oh, I
a
can't believe
race.
it.
What a chaotic race. Please
Oh,
give me some insight on this. What happened? How did you end up winning this? What happened throughout the entire race?
honestly, it was so crazy. Like, I can't even put it into words, really. Like, I got off to a really good start, made up like 5 positions into turn one, and then from there, it was all about strategy, really. Going on inters at the right time, making up ground, and then yeah, just making some key overtakes, and I had the pace on the softs to bring it home. But yeah, I can't believe it.
Yeah, no, man, you drove an absolutely outstanding race. I was talking about this earlier as well. It was the final few safety cars made everything so chaotic.
Mm.
I was running out of breath trying to keep up with the commentary of everything. It was absolutely nuts. But tell me, the wet race. Obviously, you know most of the drivers when they're trying to prepare for the upcoming weekend, they're usually trying to practice on dries and all. Did you practice in the wets at all?
No, not at all.
Oh no.
That's part of the reason why I crashed in qualifying because that was my first lap on the wet,
Oh
and
my God, I forgot.
yeah,
You were dead last at the start of this race.
yeah,
Oh
yeah.
my
Um,
Lord.
Yeah, so in qualifying, I got on the like the sausage curb out of turn three, and it spun me straight into the pit lane. And before I could even put my foot on the throttle, it just disqualified me. And yeah, but
Oh, that's crazy.
oh
Well, I'm
yeah,
sure it must be a great feeling to start from the back of the grid and then coming up to win the race. What a race you've
honestly,
had.
yeah.
So big congratulations to you guys. We tried to get CRF in here. I'm not too sure what happened with him. Uh, not too sure why he isn't in here, but regardless, I won't hold you guys up. Congratulations both to you, to both of you for what was a fantastic and very chaotic race. And I hope to see you
Thank you.
guys do even better at the next race weekend as well. So,
Yes, hopefully.
so yeah, thank you guys so much. But yes, everybody else, thank you all so much for tuning into Tier 3. I'm sure we will have a lot of stewards reports going into this one as well. I believe FX and Parker will be looking into um be getting looked at quite heavily as well as actually let me try one more time to invite CRF. I might as well. I don't want him to feel left out now, do I? Let me see. Uh he's already been added, but for some reason hasn't joined in. Regardless, everybody, thank you all so much for tuning into Tier 3. we are going to be. Let me actually check what's the next one that we'll be going towards. Right, so Brazil was this time around. We will now be seeing you all next time at Australia. Obviously, the track has been reworked on, and there's going to be some interesting overtakes to be seen over there. Regardless, thank you all so much for tuning in. I hope you all have a wonderful time, and I hope you all have enjoyed the stream as much as I have. Take care, everybody. I'm going to go take a few minutes to catch my breath.